Have you ever been completely captivated by a story? Not just entertained, but emotionally moved, changed, inspired. Maybe it was a movie, a book, a TED Talk, or even just a moment someone shared over coffee. There's something timeless and powerful about storytelling. It's one of the oldest forms of communication, yet it remains one of the most impactful. Why? Because stories are how we make sense of our lives, how we connect with each other, and how we remember what matters. Welcome to this full-length exploration of the art of storytelling, where we'll break down what makes stories work, how you can craft your own compelling narratives, and why this skill can transform the way you speak, lead, create, and live. Let's begin with something fundamental: why storytelling matters. For thousands of years, long before books, films, or podcasts, we shared knowledge through stories. Cave paintings told tales of hunts and survival. Oral traditions carried myths across generations. And today, we consume narratives daily, whether we're binge-watching a Netflix series or scrolling through TikTok. What makes stories so sticky? Neuroscience actually gives us a clue. When we hear facts, only the language parts of our brain are activated. But when we hear a story, multiple parts of our brain light up: sensory, emotional, and even motor areas. We don't just hear stories, we experience them. That's why they help us remember, why they change minds, why they create empathy. Think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, or J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series. Both used the power of narrative to shape the way people see the world. So what makes a story great? What's the anatomy of a compelling narrative? At its core, every great story includes a few key elements. First, characters. Someone we can relate to, root for, or even fear. They don't have to be perfect. In fact, their flaws are what make them believable. Then comes conflict. Without tension, there is no story. Conflict creates stakes and urgency. Next is structure, a clear beginning, middle, and end. It might sound simple, but structure gives a story its rhythm and flow. Add in transformation. We want to see characters change or discover something. And finally, emotion. Because if your audience doesn't feel something, they won't remember anything. Think about any story that stuck with you. I guarantee you it had these ingredients. Now, let's go deeper into structure. Two of the most widely used storytelling frameworks are the hero's journey and the three-act structure. The hero's journey, first popularized by Joseph Campbell, follows a character who leaves their ordinary world, faces trials, experiences a crisis, transforms, and returns changed. Sound familiar? That's Frodo in Lord of the Rings, Moana in Moana, Neo in The Matrix. The three-act structure, often used in screenwriting, breaks things down more simply. Act 1 is the setup. Introduce the character, the world, and the problem. Act 2 is confrontation, the heart of the story, where the stakes rise. Act 3 is resolution, where everything comes to a head, and the character either succeeds, fails, or learns something new. These structures work not because they're formulas, but because they reflect how we experience real life: a beginning, a struggle, and a change. Let's pause here and ask, where do you find your stories? Many people say, "But I don't have any interesting stories to tell." That's absolutely not true. Some of the most powerful stories come from ordinary moments. A mistake you made that taught you something. A conversation that shifted your perspective. A small victory after months of effort. You don't need a dragon or a spaceship. You need a moment that matters. One trick is to focus on emotional turning points. When were you scared? Ashamed? Overjoyed? Those moments contain the seeds of great storytelling. Think about a time you failed publicly. Most people have a version of this, and it's painful to relive. But that's why it works. Vulnerability creates connection. Your story isn't about impressing people. It's about helping them feel what you felt. So now that you've got a story idea, let's talk about how to actually tell it. Here's a step-by-step process anyone can follow. First, start in the action. Don't begin with long background info. Hook your audience immediately. It was 2 a.m. and I was lost in a city I didn't know. Boom, you're in. Second, give just enough context to help the listener understand the stakes. Who are you? Where are you? What's the problem? Third, build tension. Let the conflict escalate. What could go wrong? What did go wrong? Fourth, include emotions. What were you feeling during each beat of the story? That's what your audience will remember. Fifth, guide the story toward a turning point, a realization, a decision, a moment when everything changed. Finally, end with impact. Leave your audience with a thought, a reflection, or a question. The ending doesn't have to tie everything up neatly. It just has to resonate. Let's look at an example. Imagine telling a story about getting laid off. You could start by saying, "Last year I lost my job." Or you could say, "I stared at the Zoom call, and as soon as HR joined, I knew something was wrong." That's a stronger start. It puts us in the moment. As the story unfolds, share what the job meant to you, what losing it felt like, and what happened next. Maybe the ending isn't just about getting a new job, but about what you learned, about identity, self-worth, or resilience. That's not just a story, that's a transformation. Let's talk now about mediums, because storytelling looks different depending on the platform. In public speaking, you use voice, pacing, and body language. You can build suspense with silence. You can use gestures to underline moments. In writing, you rely on imagery, sentence rhythm, and structure. Show, don't tell becomes crucial. Don't say he was angry. Say, his fist clenched and his jaw locked tight. In video content, you combine visuals and sound, so you can use music, cutaways, expressions. In business, storytelling becomes a leadership tool. Think about brands like Nike or Apple. They don't just sell products, they tell stories about identity, struggle, and achievement. As a marketer, entrepreneur, or professional, your ability to craft a narrative can drive trust, buy-in, and engagement. Of course, even great storytellers make mistakes. Let's go through some common pitfalls to avoid. 1. Too much detail. If your story includes the color of your socks, you've probably gone too far. 2. Telling instead of showing. Don't say, "It was the worst day of my life." Show us what happened and let us decide how bad it was. 3. Lack of structure. A rambling story is confusing. Make sure you know your beginning, turning point, and end. 4. Making yourself the hero in every story. The best stories are not about you winning. They're about what you learned or what someone else gave you. And 5. Skipping the emotional truth. If there's no vulnerability, no reflection, your story will feel hollow. Be real. That's what audiences connect to. Now let's take a moment to actually practice. I challenge you to think of a story right now, something from your life. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just meaningful. Maybe it's the first time you traveled alone, or the time you stood up for someone, or the moment you realized you were wrong about something important. Got it? Now walk through the steps. Start with action, share the stakes, build emotion, reach the turning point, end with a reflection. Take 10 minutes, write it down. Better yet, record yourself telling it. You don't have to post it, but if you do, share it in the comments. I'd love to see what you come up with. Before we wrap up, let's quickly recap what we've covered today. Stories are how we connect and remember. Great stories have characters, conflict, structure, transformation, and emotion. The hero's journey and the 3-act structure give you a map, but your unique life experiences give you the material. The key is to find emotional moments and share them authentically. Whether you're writing, speaking, marketing, or creating content, storytelling is the skill that makes people listen, care, and remember. And like any art, it's one you can practice. You don't have to be born with it, you just have to start. So here's my closing thought. You are already a storyteller. You just might not be telling your stories yet, but your voice matters, your experiences, and someone out there needs to hear what you have to say, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. If you found this video helpful, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe for more deep dives like this. And if you're feeling bold, drop a short story in the comments. I read every one. Until next time, don't just consume stories. Go create them. Go live them. And most of all, go tell them well.